Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Lorenzo Allchurch and Alex Helfrecht, the writer and director of new play Lost Watches, which is to premiere at Park Theatre in London this summer, met when Alex directed Lorenzo as a child actor 10 years ago in a lead role in the film The White King, alongside Jonathan Pryce, Fiona Shaw and Greta Scacchi. For his debut full-length play, Lorenzo will star alongside a sculpture of the head of author William Burroughs, voiced by Jason Isaacs, star of a great many films and TV shows, including The Salt Path, The White Lotus, The Death of Stalin, and, of course, as Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter films. I spoke to Lorenzo and Alex about the play and started by asking Lorenzo what it was about.
So the show basically follows a young man in his early 20s living in London called Alan, as he's been, following the death of his mother, left with a family home that has been remortgaged and he cannot pay off. And he's dealing with those money concerns and he's dealing with the grief of the loss of his mother. And his flatmate is not a usual, typical flatmate. It is, in fact, the sculpted head of William Burroughs, voiced beautifully by Jason Isaacs. And we enter this surreal world when visitors start to arrive ahead of the bailiffs coming on Monday, these sort of ghostly apparitions. And he goes down, descends into this delirious path of discovery. That's what I'd say.
Okay. And where does all this come from in your head then?
So it began, I suppose, as all stories do, with feelings and questions. I suppose feelings of guilt and frustration in my own life and questions about, I guess, when does blood no longer become thicker than water, and how can a broken family relationship be mended, and questions like that. And it began very simply as a conversation between two estranged brothers coming back together. And I slowly began layering this with more and more kind of vignettes of family relationships, and the idea of Burroughs as the flatmate coming in. I've always been obsessed with him as a person and a historical figure. And obviously we can't have him in the show. Indeed, there was a version where he sort of walked in as an apparition, but far preferred this idea of him as the central sculpture in the middle of the play that's always there, sort of narrating at equal parts, kind of teacher and tormentor. And then bits developed, because my mum was, she made beads when I was younger. She had a bead shed at the end of the garden, and that developed into the sculpture shed of Alan's mother, and Burroughs being the central sculpture that she created. And so, yeah.
Just to clarify, she did glass blowing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? She's really talented. And,
yeah.
I've known Lorenzo for a while.
Well, yes, you've worked together for quite a while, haven't you? But
we have.
Surrealism is notoriously difficult to stage, though. If anybody's ever read Strindberg's A Dream Play or a Jet of Blood by Artaud, you just look at that and you think, how could you possibly put this on a stage? So, Alex, how do you put surrealism on stage?
Well, it's an exciting adventure, isn't it? I think that you look for the emotional reality always, and you play that honestly, and then I've tried to find a really economical way of staging it, kind of using every element of what is on stage and actually making it feel plausible somehow. Yeah. And I think, because what you don't want is to make something so surreal that audiences cannot connect to it.
Yeah.
But I think that everything we're doing within the surreal logic has an emotional reality, has moments of wonder and magic. There's moments of wonder and magic that have emotional significance. And I think that's what's so touching about Lorenzo's play. It wasn't that, oh, look at this, an amazing sort of surreal thing. That wasn't what attracted me so much as I felt it was so emotionally, well, in some ways very brave. And knowing Lorenzo as I do, I thought it was really the emotional reality that you can put on stage. I think the thing about surrealism is that you can put something that, if you're playing it naturalistically, it might be a little cliched or dull, but with a surreal visual and a kind of very sonic layer, you've got something somehow more singular and more arresting. And I think, you know, in terms of technically how we're doing the surrealism, I mean, Jason plays Burroughs very deadpan, which I think is, again, that feeds into that. So bizarrely plausible. It will feel like a very lived-in relationship. And then the other elements of surrealism, I rely heavily on music. I always have music, sound, and to create that magic. So I think it'll be a very atmospheric. When I read Lorenzo's writing, I found it very atmospheric. And I think I'm just trying to back that up, really.
As you have known him for such a long time, what did you think when you first got the script? Were you surprised by what he'd come up with, or was it what you'd expected from knowing him?
Well, it's definitely not what I expected, but Lorenzo is so smart and always was. As a kid, I knew him as a kid, and he was super precocious and smart, but always kind. And I never, we worked together on a film, and, I never spoke to him as a child. I always felt that he had this maturity about him. But I also felt that, when I read it, I felt that it does feel like a Gen Z piece. And I felt like that was a voice that I found really interesting, and that I really felt this affinity between, Lorenzo's obsession with Beat Generation and his own generation. And I was like, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So that was also surprising. But yeah, like I said, I thought it was a very giving piece of writing. I thought it was a very personal piece of writing. But I also I thought his wit and his sense of humor and his ability to write good dialogue was great. And also his ability to kind of accept feedback and criticisms, because we kind of, we did a workshopping process, and Lorenzo was just so open to ideas, and it was really joyful, doing this workshop back in March, wasn't it, Lorenzo? It was a really good time.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have worked if the team was full of people with bad ideas, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to blindly accept what comes my way. I always want to question and work it out and this and that. But it just so happened that everybody who was there was interested, engaged, on board, constantly thinking and willing to be open and work together. So it was a wonderful experience. And that thing you said about wit, I think really developed in the workshop, because I never sort of set out wanting to write something funny, and it just sort of developed. And I think humans are funny, right?
Yeah.
So, even if you don't think you are, that's when the funniest stuff happens, when it catches you off guard. And I think that's been a really wonderful thing to see develop naturally and collaboratively. So, yeah.
And it's interesting that you wrote this depressed character who, is in a way a passive observer in his own life at the beginning. He's not very empowered, and that's an interesting challenge, I think, to write a character like that. I mean, you could argue that Hamlet is that, or there are archetypes that are that. But I thought I think that'll be such a fun thing, like when we're actually working with the material to make your character engaging and compelling, even though he's often in a state of kind of paralysis almost, right?
Yeah.
Often in those darkest moments when humor does naturally come out, and like suppressing laughing in funerals and things like that. We do deal with things like that with humor, don't we?
Exactly. It's a common language that we all share to bring us closer, I suppose, in some way. Now, I think you mentioned, Alex, about it being sort of a Gen Z piece. Is obviously something that I don't identify.
No, you didn't go, I'm going to work in a
Yeah. It's like I didn't set out to do that. So it's interesting when you've said a couple of times that you see that. And there certainly is something about, I suppose, when that becomes relevant in my head in a small way is, the generational divide and the strange interplay between, as we say, the Beat Generation and Gen Z. But then more so, I suppose, these layers in the text of, it's getting harder and harder for people my age to get on property ladder and this kind of thing. And I suppose the ramifications of that being that, sort of in a strange way, because you can't have that independence or that kind of ownership, sort of a kind of stunted maturity almost in people my age, in some strange way that knocks on. I'm very interested in that flipping over point from being a child to being an adult. And Alan sort of the surreal world of the play very much represents that, because it's almost like a play world of a kid's fantasy. He's got his imaginary friend, he's got all this kind of thing. But throughout it, there's this real sense of responsibility and bureaucracy that inhabits this play world. So there's this real double-edged sword to it. So yeah, I suppose those are the ways that it comes through to me.
Oh, by the way, the property ladder is like, I'm a generation and a half above you, mate.
Yeah.
It's just to let you know on that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, the Tories and the people who came before. But like, yeah, no, I think, there are some things that resonate. I think just being in your 20s and being, there's a certain paralysis there. It's like, what, I could do this. What do I do? And of course there are obstacles, but there's something that there's a really sincere feeling there that I think the play encapsulates, and it's interesting that it is a compelling character, even though you've got this challenge. I think the rhythm of the play kind of, it escalates and escalates and escalates and becomes really kind of high tempo, but which is fun that we want to kind of, and will be these kind of visual kinetic moments, I think, in it, and also visual still moments in it.
Lorenzo, when I asked Alex what she thought when she first saw the script, you looked slightly wary for a moment there. Is there anything about what she was going to say, I think, but is there anything that surprised you, or anything that you think's a departure from what you've done before?
In terms of the writing, or in terms of how we've taken it?
Well,
since?
the writing, the script that you produced.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this has been an interesting experience for me, because it began. I've sort of, since I was 9 years old, I've been an actor, right? So that's what I've been doing. I was, a child actor, all that. But and then I sort of stopped for a bit and I focused on my education and stuff. And then I came back into the game, so to speak. And basically, this stemmed from, and I've always been interested in writing. I've always loved writing, but I never thought of myself as a writer. And essentially, what this began as was, in the back of my head, I was like, if coming back to the game was harder than I sort of assumed. Things had changed post-COVID, and it's hard to explain a sort of 7-year gap in your career or whatever, which is at 23. I'm like, well, okay. I've done a little bit before, but I was like, okay, fine. If no one's going to give me a role, I'll write one for myself, type of thing. So that's how it began, but also just as something for fun that I was just doing on the tube and whatnot. And then I started writing, and it started feeling quite special to me, and I sort of was mentioning it to Alex, and then obviously everything was the domino effect. It's gone from there. But I suppose the things that have surprised me is just how difficult because acting's always come naturally to me, how difficult it was originally in the workshop processes, how difficult I was finding my acting because I'd written it.
Yeah,
right.
So I was constantly judging the writing as I was acting in a way that I normally wouldn't. And so there's always a bit of my brain that's limiting me. And we've kind of managed now to get in a place where I can kind of sever the two me's and separate them. But I suppose that's the interesting and unique part of this experience for me, as sort of, I suppose, the second thing that I've written for a film or theatre. So, yeah. And the first one was collaborative. This is the first thing that I've written on my own, so to speak. I mean, there are plenty of collaborative moments that we had throughout the workshops, but in terms of the name on the thing, yeah.
What was the collaboration like between the two of you? Because you worked together on film and you work together now in the theatre, but it's a very different director-writer relationship traditionally between the two. I mean, one's a director's medium, film is a director's medium, and theatre is more thought of as a playwright's medium. So what's been your relationship on this?
I think, well, collaborative is it's like super relaxing for me to be collaborative, because I'm currently making a film that's, I would say, very singular, and, where you just have to make a lot of decisions. And obviously with theatre, I did bring a lot of people who I thought were great to the table, who are working in theatre, who I knew who basically support Lorenzo's vision and really just be great. Like the production designer, for instance, Rob Davis, who has I knew that he would bring such a unique visual world to the play. So I think that's been good for you, isn't it, Lorenzo? Like just bringing artists like that to the table and seeing how you jam with them. I think that's been really, really, really exciting. And and there's a really wonderful actor, Gabriella Moran, who I bought, who's playing 3 characters. Let's just say that. Don't go into too much more detail because it would be a spoiler. But I actually personally love to work with people I've worked with before. And filmmakers do it all the time. I've got a real bond with Lorenzo. He's like my film kid. So I've got real kids and Lorenzo's my film kid. But yeah, I think it's great because it allows you to cut through. It gives you a shorthand, let's say that. And I think, I only want to do, as good a job as possible for him. And I think it really, really helps in terms of, how we communicate in the rehearsal room and things like that. And I think, my job now is indeed to help you, Lorenzo, like put down the writer's hat and get really firmly in the character. And actually, there are a few things that we've already done to help that process along. Like I said to all the actors, be off book entirely for the first day of rehearsal. All the lines have to be learned. But I did that really for Lorenzo because I felt like he shouldn't be thinking about lines. They should just be coming automatically. And, so that was one thing. I wouldn't usually do that, but I said, no one seemed to balk at that. And I said, by the way, we're running the play within 3 days.
Working them hard then.
Working them hard. Yeah. But because, I think there is when you're talking about surrealism earlier, and I'd say there's also like 2 qualities of the acting style within the play. So one is like supernaturalistic because we're in the small park theatre, which is really, you don't have to do much to, it's almost like being in a close up. And, but then there's also a kind of expressionistic style, which suits the surreal thing where there are just visual moments where the way a character moves across the stage, for example, suddenly becomes really heightened. Again, like there's an emotional inner life there, but it's like it's going to be much bigger, the acting, much more expressionistic in moments like that, usually musical moments.
Yeah.
But that's another reason, like, you don't want to text in a hand when you're kind of getting into that in a rehearsal room. You don't want lines in your hand. The lines become, sorry, Lorenzo, but less relevant.
Yeah. Completely agree. Just throw it away if it was up to me, to be honest. Just throw it away.
But I don't know how much we're going to cut. It's interesting because we had this workshop process. It'll be really interesting to see what gets cut in the rehearsal room. And I suspect not a lot until previews.
Yeah. I feel like we're both thinking of the same portion of the play here. I'll say.
It's really, it's such a buzz doing new writing. And I love it. It's always a gamble. You don't know how it's going to be received. But I do believe that Lorenzo has something to say. And I do believe it's very touching. And, but you just, of course, you just never know. It's not like people go and see Hamlet for the 25th time or whatever, and they can say, "Oh, I preferred it with David Tennant. Oh no, I preferred it with Ben Whishaw." There's plenty to say, but this is it's a whole new set of rules, and people should always approach, I think, a new piece of writing with a completely open mind because, it's how there's nothing to really. You don't have to compare it to anything. You just have to sit back and go, "How does this work its magic on me? How does this make me feel?"
Yeah.
That's what's so exciting.
It is a risk doing new writing. It's a risk whether it works, but it's also a risk as in there's nothing that you can sell that people already know, is there? Except Jason Isaacs.
But that was my idea.
Yeah, there you go.
I said, Lorenzo, I haven't been in the theatre for a while. I'm not going to get any bums on seats for you. You're not going to get any bums on seats because you're a new writer. So how are we going to do it? And I said, probably, because I did this thing like many years ago at the King's Head. I did a play written by Jörg Tittel, a German, Polish, now British filmmaker, writer, director. And it was a really cool dystopian satire. And we got Richard E. Grant to do a voice in it. And it was really, really funny. And people loved it. And it was a great way to get people into the King's Head because we'd both just alighted in London and people came for that, obviously, and then they had a really good time. And I think Jason, who I've worked with a couple of times now, he's just so brilliant with voices. And I don't think people will be, even though he's not obviously in the cast in the conventional sense. I think people will not be disappointed with hearing him.
You get pretty healthy
yapping at you.
Yeah, you get pretty healthy serving.
Yeah, so it's a significant part of it. It's not just a name on the poster.
He's the second biggest single part in the play. So, yeah.
But, I mean, I can imagine he's quite busy, so I would imagine he's quite difficult to get hold of. But I can imagine you going up to him and saying, would you like to play a talking sculpture William Burroughs, that he'd immediately think, not have to think twice about that if he had the time. Is that how it happened?
He just trusts Alex so much.
Right.
To be honest. Seemed to be, from my perspective, what happened at least, because he just sort of said yes fairly quickly. I mean, there was a bit of a hiccup while he was busy doing other bits, but he never said, let me think about it. He sort of seemed pretty on board to do something zany.
Yes.
But yeah.
He's just the most passionate person. He loves acting so much. It's he still loves doing it. I think he is selective though. I think he actually really liked your play, Lorenzo, and he is not the kind of person to blow smoke up anyone's butt. So he was really complimentary, and actually I think that he does love a challenge, and he's a really creative actor. So he really takes risks and brings things to the table. That's what I love about him. Makes choices. You just get all these choices, as you saw, and knows what he's doing. Of course, he's so experienced and so technically brilliant. But yeah, it was. I think in terms of the character, that it was pretty obvious that he would be able to do it, and I don't think he's going to disappoint.
So have you already recorded his bits? Have you worked with him already?
Yes, we had. He is exceptionally busy.
Yeah.
And he's in the news a lot because he's done so much, especially this year with the Salt Path and the White Lotus 3. And, he had to, when we heard back, he said, well, I can do it.
A month ago today, I believe. Yeah, to be recorded.
He said, I can do it, but I've got one slot.
Yeah.
And I was like, when is it? He's like, tomorrow. So Lorenzo, it's now or never. So we actually recorded it a month ago.
Right.
Yeah.
We recorded it a month ago, and then that was really, really, I said, yeah, we need to jump on it. We need to do it because otherwise, he said, otherwise I can't do it until, I think 7th of July or something. And that by then we would have been in rehearsals, and actually we're rehearsing with the voice from day one. And we've also got different performances to surprise Lorenzo each night.
Right.
we've got we're not setting it. So I'll just kind of have a word and be like, okay, use the particularly naughty one, tomorrow night. Yeah, we got alternate performances. I think it's important to keep things fresh. And
yeah,
of course, it is slightly concerning because it's so technical. It's something like 170 voice cues or something, isn't it? Yeah. Mm. Very technical show.
Yeah, plenty
Stage
to go
manager
wrong.
will be getting an Oscar or whatever.
Yeah.
An Olivier. No, the stage manager is a very important. Well, they're always very important, but she's essentially an actress in this because she has to time. One kind of wrongly timed cue could change the flow of the scene.
Yeah. It's a challenge, but hopefully it'll work out. And there's so many technical challenges surrounding the head, other than just the editing of the voice, which was done wonderfully by our sound guy Dom. He's great.
Dom Brennan,
yeah,
brilliant.
But and then the head done by another Dom Pickett, and that's coming together. We saw our first little draft of it, and that needs space for speakers and all sorts of things.
All the magic. You're saying
all the magic. Oh, my bad. Yeah. Theater's real. The theater's real. Yeah.
So I think suffice it to say, Burroughs is definitely real and has been reincarnated by Jason Isaacs. But I think it's going to be a technically demanding show, and that's always really scary for a director.
Yes.
Sitting there in the tech or the dress where everything conceivably technically goes wrong, watching the spare speakers that we've got rigged around the theatre in fail safe 1, there's like 3 fail safes. But and I'm obsessed with that. Maybe I should have gone into some kind of crisis prevention role instead of directing, but
Yeah, and at that point, it's all out of your hands as well, isn't it?
It's totally out of your hands. And, you never know what the actors are going to do. And that's kind of the agony and the joy as a director, that you kind of hand it over and you're like, okay, you guys are all a family. Go off and be a family. I'm now excommunicated. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's so different to working in film, again, into that's when your work really starts, when you get rid of the actors, isn't it? Completely.
Well, yeah, sad to say that the film I'm in post on at the moment, I've been in post for 3 years.
Gosh.
So, but, it is animation. So,
yeah.
And financing woes and whatnot. But the point is, it's like, the live action shoot was part of it. And of course, the actors are important, but there's just so many other things with film. But, it is a strange thing that you have this incredible bond with people when you're putting a show together, which is the great attraction of it, the kind of collaborative nature of it. And, all the creative team bringing their things to the table, and then the actors, and then having these rather amazing experiences with actors in rehearsal. I just love that so much. But then it is a strange and lonely thing, because once it's up, you really are, it is like bye-bye.
Superfluous, yeah.
And but they carry on, and they have this wonderful bond all together, and they carry on, and that's the end of the kind of social experience in a way.
But I have been kind of interested in all the ways in which, because obviously there's such wonderful so many wonderful films that you've directed, that the sort of filmic language, the cinematic language that has come into the play almost through you, in terms.
Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, I think it's actually quite a cinematic play in a lot of ways. So I'll just say that much. But
there's this whole thing is like, I think about Sam Mendes, for instance, who's such a brilliant theatre director and also a great film director with really singular ideas. And I think, well, he was a theatre director first, number one, and I would never think of his plays as being cinematic. I would just think of them as being visual. And I think there's a misnomer in the theatre that, it is only about the writing. If you go to see any kind of theatre in Europe, especially like Berlin or, all over, there's so many elements that are often foregrounded, such as lighting or sound or set design. And I'm not saying that the writing's not important. Of course, the most important thing is the story and the writing, but I don't think it makes those things cinematic. I just think that theatre is a 3D form. We are breathing the same air as those on stage, but we're also inhabiting a sound world. There's so much that we can do with live. There's so much we can do that make a piece of theatre beyond the writing itself, beyond the story and within the story. And I think that it doesn't, just because there are perhaps visual moments in a play that are really focusing on the visual storytelling, it doesn't mean it's cinematic. It just means that for me, it's just what theatre, the kind of theatre I want to make. But it doesn't. For me, it'll never be cinematic because it's 3D, because it's in the live.
Yeah.
She said with the recorded voice. But that's what I'm trying to say. I think there's so many kinds of ways to make theatre, aren't there? I mean, I saw this absolutely extraordinary. Actually, the producers of this play are multi-talented, and a lot of the team of this show, Ernest, that have migrated to our team, and they were developing this show based on the importance of being earnest.
Yeah, that's
just toured the country, and it's going back to Edinburgh, and I just saw it at Richmond Theatre, and I was blown away by it. Now, it's sort of set up like a kind of farce, like a kind of classic, like the importance of being earnest, but essentially, what they do with it is so singular and radical, and they replace slowly and surely every cast member with real audience members, not plants, and then try and do earnest. It is honestly the funniest thing that I've seen in years. I cried and I almost peed. Honestly, it was just amazing theatre. But you couldn't say, oh, well, that theatre's like the most important thing is like the visual medium, or that, that it's not about that. But for that piece of theatre, it was absolutely perfect. But it was so alive because of the improvisation element. It was so bold. I mean, I adored it. And so it just made me realize that there are so many ways you can go in the theatre. There are so many things you can do to challenge the senses. And in that instance, it was, I don't know if people are going to be like literally wetting themselves laughing in this play, Lorenzo.
Somehow I doubt it.
People would
maybe like a snort here and there, or a small chuckle.
A snort, hopefully a snort or a giggle or
yeah.
That kind of outrageousness. I don't think we're going for that, but we are, it's just, I think it's a lovely thing. And I think it's got it has got visual moments. It has got a visual element to the storytelling and a sound element to the storytelling as well.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it fits together, but I have a lot of faith in it.
Yeah, I mean, film and theatre have fed into one another over the past 100 years, probably, haven't they? Quite a lot. I mean, you said you like the use of music, which has probably come from film, background music, but is used quite a lot in theatre now, and that's important to you, is it?
So important. I mean, if I had my way, I'd always have live music, some description, just because we have this option of being with live people in a space, which is just so incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
That you sort of, you just long to exploit that in every which way. And I think a lot of music in the theatre is actually quite overlooked. I mean, I think it's not as good as it could be. I think it's not, I think a lot of it, especially in the West End, can be really kind of stock, kind of like, okay, we're going to just whack something on under a monologue or on a scene transition. And it feels kind of generic musically, and it's not kind of woven into the fabric of what the play's about and the real tone of the play,
Yeah.
But I guess, but we have that opportunity, that sound and music. I really, I think sound and music is probably number one for me. And actually, music is a great way to access things in actors that go beyond. Sometimes we can get stuck in our heads, and sometimes finding a way into a scene through music is incredibly valuable. It doesn't work for everyone, but actors all respond so differently. I mean, some actors are rubbish at lines, but if you give them something to do, really give them something to do, then they get less hung up on the lines, and they become really electrifying. Look at actors like Keanu Reeves. You get him doing Shakespeare, it's kind of absurd, but you get him running, and you see how he does incredible martial arts and things like that, and how compelling he is suddenly when he's doing those things, and he is emotionally connected and all those things. It's interesting, and knowing what kind of an actor you have to work with is quite important, I think, because some actors you think they're not doing anything particularly interesting, and then you put a camera on them and suddenly they're riveting. So I've never understood why that is. Gabby's interesting on stage, but she's really interesting on screen, for instance, the actor. But I think, in a small, you're more under the microscope in somewhere like the Park.
Yeah.
I think you do have to adapt your acting style for wherever you are.
What kind of actor are you then, Lorenzo? Is music important to you?
Nah. No, music's important just in my day-to-day life. Yeah, I might be the only person my age left who listens to new music Friday. But music in theatre and film. I mean, yeah, hugely. I mean, on this short that I wrote called Bollocks, the music was incredible, done by Finley Ross. And the thing is, oftentimes good music and good score should go unnoticed and be woven into the whole texture of the thing. So it's kind of like editing, almost, in a way. Good editing, you shouldn't be picking up on the editing, so to speak. So they're almost like sometimes thankless tasks. Obviously, you get moments. I suppose what Alex is talking about a lot of the time in reference to this show is the sort of more heightened expressionistic moments.
Yeah.
And then we can get the music to really shine, I suppose. I have no idea what kind of actor I am. That's for you guys to decide. But hopefully a decent one.
A very intelligent one. Quite cerebral, though.
Well, perfect for a writer, then.
Yeah.
He was always incredibly hardworking as well. When you were a kid, Lorenzo, your resilience and your commitment, which is, and bravery. I mean, I think those things are really the most important thing for actors to be. I don't really think of it as like, oh, you're good or you're bad, but if you're like brave and resilient and able to just keep going, that is a massive, massive thing. And there's also an element of trust involved, right? Because you're in a director's hands, and they're going to ask you to do things. But you've got, as you said, you've got a lot of kickback in you, which is good.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of kickback. A healthy amount.
No, you were always. In fact, you were very. God, it sounds awful to say. As a kid, you were really compliant. Compliant. Just did what you were told. But no, you understood things on a really deep emotional level. That's what was so impressive when you were 13 years old. 10 years ago, we filmed, and you were in every scene and everything like that. So it's a huge commitment. And actually, your parents, they gave you to me when you just turned 13, which I think is a really important time for a boy, like 12 to 13. And you missed lots of things because you were filming, and that's.
Yeah, but I loved it. So
yeah, you loved. Yeah, you did. You're like, with kid actors, it's like I have one criteria, which is like, are the parents, well, is it the parents that want to be on the stage or the kid?
Yeah.
And I mean, working with kids and animals, really not easy. I'm not doing it again in a hurry. No offense, Lorenzo, but
yeah.
I'm happy that you're an adult, and it's just, but it's it's lovely to be reunited in this way, and like to see Lorenzo writing and being creative, because that's the thing. I felt that you always had a lot of strings to your bow, and I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years you're directing.
Oh no, I've got
in 5 years.
I've got a sneaking suspicion about myself that that's the one thing I could never do is direct.
Is it?
Yeah. That's one thing I could never do. I wouldn't. Yeah, I try to be like, oh no, just say it like this too much, and I get too frustrated. I wouldn't have the composure for it, and I wouldn't. Yeah, I've got a suspicion I couldn't direct. So yeah.
But directing theatre is so lovely because you just bring all these brilliant people to the table and they do their thing.
Yeah,
and let's do it. Let's just it's different. It's different. I mean, of course, in film, lots of people come to the table, but the pressure is different somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of managing a big team of people really on a film set, aren't you? Whereas in the theatre, even in the theatre, in the rehearsal room, it's a great experience working with actors in a rehearsal room as a director. But there'll be some point which everybody turns to you and says, "Right, what next?" So you've still got to be on the ball, and you've still got to be creative as a director in the rehearsal room, haven't you?
Yes, for sure, and sometimes it's a sort of combination of being prepared, but also being in the moment and having ideas on the fly is really, really special as well. And I think often there's more. I think in both you have that. You go, oh, why don't we try this? But with film, certainly, I've planned and blocked every frame visually. Every single frame is planned.
Yeah,
that's the way I've worked and drawn actually, and storyboarded. Whereas if you have a very, very fixed idea, and an actor goes like, I don't really think I would come on that way. I wouldn't come on there. It doesn't make any sense. Whatever. You have to take that into consideration because you sort of want it to feel organic. So you've got to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
And also, you can have a lot of fixed ideas about how you're going to do something, and it just might not work. So, I'm thinking about this because we have some exciting pyrotechnic elements, for example. So, thinking about, you can plan it, but until you're actually playing with the fire. And also then you've got to be adaptable because, health and safety will come in and say, well, sorry, you can't do that. So you can have a plan, but until they see it, they'll say, well, what's your plan? And you go, this is the plan.
Yeah.
And then, you try it and they go, oh no, this isn't going to work. And you go, oh my God, it's the tech rehearsal. What do we...
I was talking to a couple of directors recently, and they said some artistic decisions come about because you can't bring anything on from stage left in that theatre. It's something as practical as that.
Yes, I think that's right. I think that's entirely right. And thinking, well, we've got to do this set change. How are we going to be fluid about it or something? Well, we can't. If we only get the stage management on, it's going to take 15 minutes to clear the stage. So the actors have to do it. Well, who's clearing what and why? And have you got? And are you going to just do it in a blackout, or I've got this weird thing in my brain that you only earn 1 or 2 blackouts at most in a show, and you can't do it in a blackout. So they've got to have a reason to move things around. And what's their reason? And
there's a lot of clever repurposing of objects. No,
in Lost Watches.
Yeah, I think you and Rob have figured it out. I think works well. And some specially designed kits that can be used and used again. So,
including edible glitter.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
I don't see you want to use that again and again, Lorenzo.
Oh, yeah. It'll be great.
All right. So after this is at the end of this month, you'll be opening this. What have you both got on after that? Have you got anything planned?
Yeah, I'm currently working on 2 projects. We'll call it 2. One of which is a very early play script, and one of which is building up for my first feature film with a close collaborator and friend of mine. So that's quite exciting. That's all I'm going to say at the moment. But yeah, 2 things in the pipeline: 1 film, 1 theatre, and that's going to be an exciting journey. So yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah,
Alex.
My film is still trundling along in post with its financial woes. So we're hoping to have more cash soon to finish it.
Luckily, my feature will be a lot cheaper than yours.
Yes, mine is. Actually, Jason's in it. Jason Isaacs is in it. So I'm doing that. I'm always doing that. But I've also got a writing residency that I'm doing. I've written a novel in the past. But while I'm in post-production, I've written a novel. Right. Because actually, you got all these creative ideas. Even a play requires a bunch of people. It's much easier and cheaper to get a budget together for a play than it is for a movie. But, a novel, it's just your imagination and your laptop. And then people are either going to say, no, it's crap, I don't want it, or actually it's interesting, let's edit it for a couple of years. But either way, it doesn't require any money to do it. So anyway, I wrote this novel, and I'm actually in August doing a second workshop of it, turning it into a 1-woman show with an opera singer, a New York composer, and a cellist. So it's basically like a 1-woman opera, essentially. And so we're doing a second big development thing in August of that. And then I'm doing a residency with the novel in Sweden after that.
Right. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's different. And then there's another theatre project, which actually, Lorenzo, remember we did a reading at the Young Vic, and I'd like Lorenzo involved with that. And that's by the actor Angus McFadden has written a script, which is a sequel to Uncle Vanya.
Yeah.
And we did a reading of that with Denise Goff and Jared Harris and Jason a year and a bit ago. And I think it's really got legs. And there's actually a role for Lorenzo in it. And so that's kind of something we're trying to get on. And I think that could be in quite a big theatre potentially. So,
right.
So I've got to try and set that up.
That was Alex Helfrecht, director, and Lorenzo Allchurch, writer and actor, talking about Lost Watches, which can be seen at Park Theatre in London from the 30th of July to the 23rd of August 2025. For more information and tickets, see parktheatre.co.uk.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.